Behind the glittering banquet lay three private struggles. Catherine was fighting to protect the dignity of a role she had never demanded but had spent years preparing to carry. Camilla was fighting against the fear of becoming ceremonial background. William was trapped between his father's reign and his wife's humiliation. When Catherine left the room, each of them understood that the confrontation was no longer about a chair. It was about who the monarchy trusted to represent its future. Catherine gripped the edge of a console table beyond the ballroom and forced herself to breathe. The Princess of Wales, the title held by the woman married to the heir to the throne, had spent years accepting extra duties without complaint. She had stepped into empty spaces and carried responsibility without asking for applause. That restraint had become one of the monarchy's strongest protections. Now it had been treated as weakness. William reached her seconds later, his anger sharpened by guilt. He had encouraged her to accept the central banquet role after receiving written confirmation that Camilla would not attend. He had promised the arrangement was settled. Now the prince believed his reassurance had placed his wife directly in the path of humiliation. Catherine looked at him and spoke quietly. She could endure correction behind closed doors, she said, but she would not accept being moved before foreign guests, as though years of service meant nothing. Camilla took the restored seat beside Charles. Yet victory gave her no comfort. The queen consort, meaning the wife of the reigning king, had feared that one successful state occasion without her might prove the palace could move forward too easily. Her late arrival had not been driven by ceremony alone. It had been driven by the terror of becoming unnecessary. Charles refused to meet her eyes, and the visiting head of state beside him asked whether Catherine had become unwell. Camilla answered, but even she heard how empty the explanation sounded. Sophie left the table and found Catherine in the adjoining gallery. The trusted confidant recognized the difference between confusion and design. She revealed through a private, documented account later shared with William that Camilla's office had contacted palace staff shortly before the banquet, yet deliberately avoided informing the Wales household. Catherine's face changed. Hurt hardened into cold resolve. Someone had allowed her to enter that room knowing she might later be displaced. William turned to Sophie and asked one question. Who authorized the altered seating plan? Her answer pointed toward a decision made hours earlier, behind a closed door. To understand why that authorization was given, the story must return to the private incident that transformed an uneasy rivalry into a deliberate contest for royal precedence. The banquet crisis began 3 weeks earlier, in a nearly empty throne room. Catherine believed she was attending a routine ceremonial rehearsal. Camilla believed she was witnessing her own authority being transferred before she had agreed to surrender it. One sentence, spoken beside a row of vacant gilded chairs, changed everything. From that moment, the approaching banquet was no longer simply a diplomatic event. It became a test of rank, loyalty, and who would be permitted to command the room. Charles had asked Catherine to attend because Camilla had withdrawn from several evening engagements, citing exhaustion. The princess agreed without complaint. A receiving line is the formal order in which royals greet important guests, while an opening procession is the planned entrance that signals rank and responsibility. Palace planners therefore placed Catherine beside William, assigned her the senior female position nearest the king, and instructed her to lead the pace of the evening. Camilla entered without warning as the rehearsal reached its most sensitive point. The master of the household, the senior official responsible for organizing major palace ceremonies, it turned toward Catherine and said, "From this point onward, the procession will follow your pace." The queen consort stopped. She heard no temporary instruction in those words. She heard replacement. Camilla asked why Catherine was standing in the position marked for the queen. The princess answered that she was following the approved arrangement because Charles had personally asked her to take responsibility. The monarch's wife replied that temporary duty should never be mistaken for permanent precedence, meaning the formal order that decides who stands, enters, or sits before another royal. Catherine did not step back. She told Camilla that she had never requested the role, but she would not apologize for carrying out an assignment given by the king. Silence followed. Then the queen consort lifted the place card bearing Catherine's name and set it on a side table, as though removing the card could erase the decision behind it. Charles called Catherine into his private study later that day. In a recorded account prepared for the household file, the king assured her that the revised arrangement would remain unchanged. He promised there would be no last-minute interference, and instructed his staff to treat the banquet plan as final. Camilla learned of that promise through a senior aide who documented the exchange in an internal briefing note. She did not challenge Charles directly. Instead, her office confirmed that she would remain absent, while quietly preserving the option of arriving at the final moment. Catherine returned alone after the rehearsal. She retrieved the displaced place card, carried it back to her office, and placed it inside the banquet folder. She kept it because the conflict no longer felt accidental. On the night of the banquet, that same card waited at her seat when an equerry received the sudden order to remove it. When the two women finally faced each other after Catherine's exit, neither could pretend the confrontation was about scheduling, fatigue, or an innocent misunderstanding. The banquet crisis began 3 weeks earlier, in a nearly empty throne room. Catherine believed she was attending a routine ceremonial rehearsal. Camilla believed she was witnessing her own authority being transferred before she had agreed to surrender it. One sentence, spoken beside a row of vacant gilded chairs, changed everything. From that moment, the approaching banquet was no longer simply a diplomatic event. It became a test of rank, loyalty, and who would be permitted to command the room. Charles had asked Catherine to attend because Camilla had withdrawn from several evening engagements, citing exhaustion. The princess agreed without complaint. A receiving line is the formal order in which royals greet important guests, while an opening procession is the planned entrance that signals rank and responsibility. Palace planners therefore placed Catherine beside William, assigned her the senior female position nearest the king, and instructed her to lead the pace of the evening. Camilla entered without warning as the rehearsal reached its most sensitive point. The master of the household, the senior official responsible for organizing major palace ceremonies, turned toward Catherine and said, "From this point onward, the procession will follow your pace." The queen consort stopped. She heard no temporary instruction in those words. She heard replacement. Camilla asked why Catherine was standing in the position marked for the queen. The princess answered that she was following the approved arrangement because Charles had personally asked her to take responsibility. The monarch's wife replied that temporary duty should never be mistaken for permanent precedence, meaning the formal order that decides who stands, enters, or sits before another royal. Catherine did not step back. She told Camilla that she had never requested the role, but she would not apologize for carrying out an assignment given by the king. Silence followed. Then the queen consort lifted the place card bearing Catherine's name and set it on a side table, as though removing the card could erase the decision behind it. Charles called Catherine into his private study later that day. In a recorded account prepared for the household file, the king assured her that the revised arrangement would remain unchanged. He promised there would be no last-minute interference and instructed his staff to treat the banquet plan as final. Camilla learned of that promise through a senior aide who documented the exchange in an internal briefing note. She did not challenge Charles directly. Instead, her office confirmed that she would remain absent while quietly preserving the option of arriving at the final moment. Catherine returned alone after the rehearsal. She retrieved the displaced place card, carried it back to her office, and placed it inside the banquet folder. She kept it because the conflict no longer felt accidental. On the night of the banquet, that same card waited at her seat when an equerry received the sudden order to remove it. When the two women finally faced each other after Catherine's exit, neither could pretend the confrontation was about scheduling, fatigue, or an innocent misunderstanding. Catherine had almost reached the private staircase when Camilla followed her out of the ballroom. No photographers were present. No courtiers stood close enough to interrupt. For the first time that evening, the two women faced each other without ceremony protecting them. Camilla accused the princess of staging a dramatic departure. Catherine accused the queen consort of creating the humiliation that forced it. Then William stepped between them, and the argument became something far more dangerous, a direct challenge to the boundaries of the king's household. Camilla had left the banquet only after realizing Charles would not defend her before the guests. The queen consort needed Catherine back inside before foreign dignitaries understood that the empty chair represented a family rupture. A state banquet is a formal royal dinner held to honor an important overseas visitor, and every movement inside it carries diplomatic meaning. Catherine's absence could not be dismissed as private discomfort. It threatened to become the evening's defining message. William arrived moments later and stood beside Catherine, not between the two women. The prince said nothing at first, yet his position made his loyalty clear. Camilla demanded that the princess return immediately, accusing her of turning a seating adjustment into a public spectacle. Catherine reached for the corridor door and closed it. She looked directly at Camilla and answered, "The crown gave me its word." You decided your arrival mattered more than that word. The crown meant the sovereign's official authority, not merely the person wearing it. That distinction mattered, because Charles had approved the arrangement himself. Camilla refused to retreat. She insisted that no one could displace the queen at a state banquet. Catherine replied that she had attempted no such thing. The place had been assigned only after Camilla withdrew, confirmed her absence, and allowed the palace to prepare an entirely different ceremonial order. William asked who had ordered the seat change. Camilla refused to name the aide, and called the adjustment self-evident. His voice hardened. He told her that humiliating his wife could never be treated as an automatic act of protocol, meaning the formal rules that govern royal behavior. Charles entered before Camilla could answer. The king confirmed that he had forbidden any alteration to the banquet arrangement. Silence struck harder than anger. His admission proved she had acted against his explicit decision. Charles then asked why her office had concealed the possibility of her attendance. Camilla admitted she wanted to avoid unnecessary argument. The answer revealed that she had expected resistance before entering the palace. Catherine's fury faded into sadness when Charles apologized. She told him the apology came only after she had been publicly diminished, and returning now would make her appear willing to accept it. William faced his father and delivered the ultimatum. Unless a formal decision came before the banquet ended, he and Catherine would leave together. That ultimatum forced Charles to choose not simply between two women, but between preserving Camilla's authority and protecting the credibility of his own command. For years, Charles had survived family conflict by delaying decisions until emotion cooled. That strategy failed in the corridor outside the state banquet. Catherine would not return. William would not remain without her. Camilla would not admit that her entrance had been designed to reclaim the center of the evening. The king now faced a brutal truth. If he allowed the alteration to stand, every future instruction carrying his signature could be challenged by whoever arrived with enough confidence to overturn it. Charles entered a small antechamber alone and closed the door. The king held ultimate authority over ceremonial arrangements within his household, but daily control passed through private secretaries, equerries, and separate royal offices. Private secretaries manage a royal's official work, while equerries are trusted officers who assist with ceremonies and personal duties. That divided system worked only when every office respected the monarch's final word. Camilla had counted on something else. The queen consort believed staff would place her rank above an earlier written order, even if that order carried Charles's approval. By taking the restored seat, she had tested whether status could overpower command. If she succeeded, the decision would reach far beyond one banquet. It would prove that instructions could be rewritten by pressure. Charles removed his glasses and opened the final banquet briefing. His handwritten approval sat beside Catherine's assigned position. He read it once, then again, before setting the folder down without speaking. Betrayal tightened inside him. Yet correcting Camilla in public risked exposing instability in their marriage and damaging the unity he had worked so hard to display. William refused to let that fear decide the outcome. The prince told his father that silence would not preserve unity. It would teach every member of the household that Catherine could be humiliated whenever someone with higher rank chose to rewrite an agreement. He reminded Charles that authority meant nothing if the person who gave the order would not defend it. The senior equerry entered and admitted, in a documented account prepared for the king's office, that the instruction had come from Camilla's private secretary. The aide had invoked the queen's authority, but produced no written approval from Charles. Sophie then confirmed through a private recorded conversation that two staff members had questioned the change. The trusted confidant explained that both complied because they feared refusing an instruction linked to Camilla. Their hesitation revealed the deeper danger. The palace machinery itself had been forced to choose between rank and lawful command. Charles made his decision. He ordered the equerry to restore Catherine's original place card and declared that no royal office could alter a state ceremony without written authorization from the sovereign's household, meaning the central staff acting directly for the monarch. The ruling restored his authority, but it came too late to restore the evening. Catherine had already left the palace. Camilla now had to return to a banquet table where the seat she had reclaimed had been quietly removed. As the place cards were changed for a second time, the consequences spread through the palace faster than any official explanation could contain them. The orchestra resumed. The first course was served, and the banquet continued beneath chandeliers that made everything appear unchanged. Yet every guest understood that the evening had broken apart. Catherine was gone. William's chair remained empty. Camilla returned to discover that her place beside Charles had been removed under the king's direct instruction. No announcement was made, none was needed. The carefully choreographed image of royal unity had collapsed, and each empty seat told a different part of the story. Palace officials moved quickly to contain the damage. They told the visiting delegation that the Prince and Princess of Wales had left because of an urgent private matter. That explanation failed before it was fully delivered. The guests had watched Catherine walk out and had seen William follow moments later. A royal household is the group of staff supporting each senior family member, and its credibility depends on making conflict appear controlled. That night, control had vanished. Sophie now sat closer to Charles while Camilla had been moved farther down the table. The trusted confidant understood why the alteration mattered. Seating at a state banquet reflects rank, trust, and ceremonial favor. Officials called the change logistical, but no one believed them. The queen consort had tried to displace Catherine, and the king had answered by displacing her. Camilla returned to the ballroom and stopped when she saw her name card. Her private secretary leaned toward her, ready to explain the order. She raised one hand and silenced him. Defiance drained away. Charles had corrected her in the same room where she had tried to correct the princess, turning her unannounced arrival into a defeat witnessed by diplomats and relatives alike. Catherine finally broke inside the car, leaving the palace. She told William that she felt ashamed foreign guests had witnessed the family's dysfunction. The prince took her hand and said the shame belonged to those who had created the humiliation, not to the woman who refused to accept it. His anger remained, but beneath it sat something deeper. Sorrow that his wife had once again been asked to protect an institution that had failed to protect her. William's phone vibrated. Charles asked them to return for the final toast, the formal speech delivered near the end of the dinner. The future king looked at Catherine, deleted the message without replying, and told the driver to continue toward Kensington Palace. Charles changed his prepared remarks moments later. The monarch removed a passage praising royal unity, and instead spoke about trust, responsibility, and the duty to honor commitments. Sophie watched Camilla lower her eyes. She understood that he was addressing the room diplomatically, but speaking to his wife personally. After midnight, Charles requested a private meeting with William and Catherine. The princess agreed on one condition: Camilla must attend and listen without aids. That condition created the first honest conversation of the crisis, because rank, staff, and ceremony could no longer stand between the four people whose choices had caused it. The next morning, 4 chairs were arranged in a private sitting room. No private secretaries waited outside the door. No briefing papers were placed on the table. Catherine, William, Charles, and Camilla entered as members of one family, rather than representatives of competing royal households. The silence lasted longer than anyone expected. Then Catherine spoke first. She did not demand punishment. She demanded certainty that her dignity would never again depend on whether another person decided to respect an approved decision. Catherine had agreed to attend because she wanted the dispute contained before it became a permanent divide between the king's household and the Wales family. A royal household is the staff and office supporting each senior royal, and conflict between those offices can shape public duties, access, and authority. William understood that one unresolved banquet could poison every ceremony that followed. Charles made the purpose clear. The king said they were not there to debate rank or decide who stood above whom. They were there to determine whether trust could survive after one office had deliberately disrupted an arrangement he had approved. Camilla listened without interruption, but tension remained in every pause. Catherine turned toward the queen consort. She said the deepest wound was not losing the seat. It was being made to feel that years of loyalty could be erased by one whispered instruction. The princess had accepted pressure, scrutiny, and duty without demanding special protection. Yet on the night she was asked to step forward, someone had chosen to push her back. Camilla answered that she had acted to protect the visibility of the queen's role. William replied at once. Authority protected through humiliation, he said, became insecurity rather than leadership. The prince did not raise his voice, but the judgment landed with greater force because he refused to soften it. Charles lowered his eyes and accepted his own share of blame. He admitted that overlapping offices and unclear personal boundaries had been allowed to grow for too long. His habit of ignoring smaller breaches had created the conditions for a public one. The monarch had hoped silence would preserve peace. Instead, silence had taught everyone that limits could be tested. Camilla finally spoke with honesty. In a private recorded account prepared after the meeting, She admitted that watching Catherine rehearse in the senior position had frightened her. She believed the palace was not preparing for one banquet. It was rehearsing a future in which the princess had already become more necessary than the queen. Catherine did not celebrate the admission. She said the future could not be stopped by embarrassing those expected to carry it, and she had never needed Camilla to disappear in order to perform her duty. Camilla apologized directly. She accepted that her office had concealed her intended arrival and admitted the order to move Catherine was wrong. Charles then announced a written settlement redefining ceremonial responsibility. The apology healed the personal wound, but only the king's next decision could transform that fragile understanding into lasting change within the monarchy. By sunrise, the banquet's empty chairs had become more powerful than any official portrait. The public did not know every word exchanged behind the ballroom doors, but they understood what Catherine's departure represented. She had refused to smile through humiliation, simply to preserve appearances. Camilla's late arrival was no longer discussed as a breach of punctuality. It had become a national argument about respect, succession, and whether the monarchy's future could be diminished to protect the anxieties of its present. The palace moved quickly, but speed could not erase what guests had witnessed. An official statement confirmed that the Prince and Princess of Wales had left early, following an internal ceremonial disagreement resolved by Charles. A ceremonial disagreement means a conflict over formal royal duties, positions, or protocol during an official event. The careful wording avoided blame, yet the absence of denial told the public that something serious had happened. Charles followed the statement with a new protocol. The king ordered that every change to a major state event must receive written authorization from the sovereign's principal private secretary, the senior official who manages the monarch's formal decisions. No separate royal office could again rewrite arrangements through a private message or whispered command. Outside Kensington Palace, the public response became impossible to ignore. A crowd gathered near the gates carrying flowers and handwritten cards for Catherine. One message rested against the railings with 6 words that captured the national mood. Dignity does not require silence. The princess read a photograph of the card in her morning briefing and lowered the page without smiling. A national broadcaster intensified the storm that evening. Its program opened with an image of Catherine's empty banquet chair beneath the headline, "The seat she refused to surrender quietly." The presenter described her departure as controlled resistance, not an emotional outburst. Within hours, public sympathy shifted sharply toward the future queen. Catherine felt no victory. She instructed her staff not to encourage stories portraying her as triumphant over Camilla. The princess understood that public praise had grown from private pain, and she refused to turn a family fracture into personal advancement. Camilla watched the coverage alone. Commentators described the queen consort's arrival as an attempt to reclaim relevance before the monarchy moved beyond her. The words wounded her, but she did not ask Charles to challenge them. She now understood that her own decision had created the image she feared most. William issued no statement. Instead, the prince appeared beside Catherine at a scheduled engagement and walked half a step behind her as she greeted the waiting crowd. His silence said enough. The palace then confirmed that Catherine would retain the senior ceremonial role at the next state banquet, while Camilla would attend under a fixed schedule, approved in advance by Charles. The public argument was settled. The protocol had been rewritten, yet the deepest consequence remained inside the family. The answer would not be found in headlines or palace statements, but in the altered relationship between 4 royals who could never again return to the comfortable silence that existed before the banquet. Catherine's departure lasted only minutes, yet it changed the balance of the monarchy more decisively than months of private negotiation. She did not storm out because she had lost a prestigious seat. She walked away because remaining would have required her to accept humiliation as the price of unity. By refusing, she forced Charles to defend his own authority, compelled Camilla to confront her fear of replacement, and showed William that protecting the future sometimes means refusing to cooperate with the mistakes of the present. Charles formalized the new ceremonial protocol and removed every remaining doubt. The king declared that approved responsibilities could not be revoked through rank, pressure, or surprise. A ceremonial protocol is the official set of rules governing positions, entrances, duties, and conduct at royal events. By making those commitments binding on every royal household, the monarch restored authority not through force, but through consistency. Catherine returned to public duty without presenting herself as a victim. At the next formal reception, The princess entered calmly beside William, accepted the position assigned to her, and carried out every responsibility without triumph. She had learned something painful, but lasting. Quiet endurance was not always the same as duty. Sometimes composure meant walking away before silence became permission. William understood the lesson as deeply as his wife. The prince recognized that neutrality would have abandoned Catherine when she needed visible loyalty most. By following her out of the banquet, he had drawn a boundary around their marriage. Their partnership would not be sacrificed to protect a false image of harmony, no matter how powerful the pressure became. Camilla faced a harder truth. The queen consort accepted that insecurity had turned a ceremonial concern into a personal attack. Her apology could not erase Catherine's humiliation, but it marked the first time she admitted that the princess's growing importance was not theft. The future was approaching because time demanded it, not because another woman had plotted to take her place. Charles also changed. The monarch finally understood that peace maintained through avoidance was never secure. His ruling proved that unity could not mean protecting the person who broke an agreement while asking the injured person to smile through it. Before the next state banquet, Camilla entered the preparation room on time and found Catherine reviewing the procession order. She placed the approved seating plan on the table and said, "No changes." The princess looked at her, nodded once, and the two women entered the corridor together. The crisis did not end in friendship or sentimental reconciliation. It ended with boundaries, accountability, and respect. The banquet began as a display of royal unity, but its true legacy was more honest. The monarchy could move forward only after Catherine refused to pretend that silence and loyalty were the same thing. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.